Trump wants the head of Jerome Powell, the head of the Fed. Welcome to Doug in Exile. This is a brand new scandal blowing up where they're pressuring him to step down. Here's Laura Ingraham. This is where it started.
So the tariffs, Grant, are not causing inflation as the angle predicted. There wouldn't be inflation. Money is pouring into the country. So what is Powell doing here exactly?
Well, he's either stupid, which I don't think is the case, or he's just unpatriotic and he's actually wanting to damage, as he promised a year ago, Laura. He was willing to even damage the middle class if it controlled inflation. But in truth, the American people need to know that Jerome Powell nor any Fed has ever controlled inflation. And in fact, President Trump has had more to do with bringing inflation down in this country. Everywhere Jerome Powell is involved, prices are still up. Mortgages are too expensive. And everywhere President Trump has had full and total control, the tariffs, taxes, regulations, inflation has come down, including oil production. We have the lowest gas prices in the country. How can the Treasury Secretary, the Commerce Secretary, President Trump, and the chairman of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac be wrong with one guy being right? And the only part of our economy that is frozen is housing. That's on Jerome Powell. He has literally set the middle class back a decade.
Set the middle class back a decade because our interest rates are too high. So every president wants those interest rates down so it's cheaper to get a loan and you qualify for a bigger house and more housing. So Jerome Powell's being accused of leaving that interest rate artificially high. Hurts the middle class, hurts the lower class, and getting into home ownership, which is one of the top ways that Americans can make a little money off the system, is in your housing and how it goes up over time. And then Jerome Powell would dive bomb interest rates under Biden to artificially put the economy on steroids. Here's more, but that's not the scandal. The scandal's still coming. But right now, the number one guy looking to replace him is Scott Bessent, who we've done a lot of work on. Here's Scott Bessent on if he would take that role if offered.
While we're talking about interest rates and the Federal Reserve, it has been recently reported that you might be in consideration for the job as the next Fed chair. When you've been asked about the likelihood recently, you said that it's up to the president. Is it a job that you would want?
I will do what the president wants, but I think I have the best job in D.C. We're making a lot of progress with the president's leadership. Think about it. We are going to have the tax bill on his desk by July 4th. We're going to be wrapping up the trade talks. So I think we've had great momentum, and we will be working on Chair Powell's successor over the coming weeks and months.
You had mentioned that an announcement could be as early as October or November, and Powell's term ends in May of 2026. How is the street supposed to navigate between that announcement time and the time between the term being over for Chair Powell? You were the one, I want to remind people, that had brought up the idea of a shadow Fed chair prior to the election. Is a new appointee supposed to be considered that shadow Fed chair?
Well, not necessarily. We'll see. There's a seat opening up, a 14-year seat opening up in January. So we've given thought to the idea that perhaps that person would go on to become the chair when Jay Powell leaves in May.
Okay, that's on him leaving in May. No, they're going to boot this guy before that. Trump's going to pressure him out. And they're using this scandal. Which scandal? This is over at Politico. Jerome Powell, Trump's top housing regulator, calls on Congress to investigate Powell. The head of the Federal Housing Finance Agency claimed the Fed chair, Powell, lied in his characterization of upgrades at the central bank's headquarters. Here goes. Washington's top housing regulator is escalating his fight against Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, calling on Congress to investigate the central banking chief. Now, this, I believe, is purely timed to get Powell to step down early. They might even throw him a deal, say, look, this thing goes away if you get out. Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Bill Pulte, that's this guy in the picture here, who has increasingly complained that high borrowing costs are damaging the housing market, pressed lawmakers on Wednesday to probe Powell's alleged political bias, as well as his recent Senate testimony about the renovation of the Fed's headquarters. Pulte claimed in a statement that Powell lied to lawmakers last week in his characterization of upgrades at the nearly centuries-old headquarters, which Powell said was in need of serious renovation. So how's he going to renovate it? That's the scandal. This is nothing short of a malfeasance and is worthy of for cause removal, Pulte said in the statement, which was shared on his X account. Chairman Powell needs to be investigated by Congress immediately. Pulte's attacks have echoed President Donald Trump's own criticism of the Fed chair, whom he has taken to calling too late in lowering interest rates. Earlier this week, the president sent a handwritten note to Powell saying, "You have cost the USA a fortune and continue to do so." We're going to get to that note, which Caroline Levitt read in public, while noting that interest rates in the U.S. remain higher than in other major economies. The focus on the Fed building renovations is a new front in the administration's attacks on Powell. The Fed leader has asked at a hearing by Senate Banking Chair Tim Scott about the project after a New York Post article characterized it as akin to the Palace of Versailles. According to plans submitted to the National Capital Planning Commission, the project is designed to upgrade the headquarters and a nearby building purchased by the Fed, as well as to consolidate workspace for central bank employees so the institution can get rid of some off-site leases. There's no VIP dining room, Powell told senators. There's no new marble. There's no special elevators. There are no new water features. There's no beehives. There's no roof terraced gardens. At least one of the statements is debatable. According to the documents submitted to the NCPC as of 2021, the central bank planned to have 2 pairs of vegetated roof spaces for the finished headquarters, although only one of those pairs were planned as occupiable space for building users. The other pair will be used by accessible for maintenance, according to a document. Here's more. Breaking. U.S. Federal Housing Chair Bill Pulte calls for Congress to investigate Jerome Powell. Powell has kept rates artificially high to spite President Trump, causing millions of homeowners and buyers great harm. Do your job, Congress. Investigate Powell. Now, here's the problem. If you lower interest rates and it overheats the economy, then you'll have a problem with inflation. So you never want money to be too easily accessible. But this is a normal range to lower those rates and help Trump out a little. Here's the U.S. Federal Housing and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac chairman calls on Congress to investigate Jerome Powell. Today, the director of U.S. Housing of Chairman Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Jim Pulte, issued the following statement. I'm asking Congress to investigate Chairman Powell, his political bias, and his deep, deceptive Senate testimony, which is enough to be removed for cause. He says it's enough evidence to remove him just on that. Now, here's Caroline Levitt reading about our interest rates being higher than nearly every other country in the developed world, which artificially puts America last, and Trump wants America first. He's always trying to flex and push our economic advantage for the rest of the world to our benefit. Here's Caroline Levitt.
The world. At the top is Switzerland. They're only paying a quarter for interest rates. Cambodia, Japan, Denmark, Thailand, Botswana, Barbados, Taiwan, Bulgaria, Cuba, Sweden, Morocco, Cabo Verde, South Korea, Algeria, Canada, Albania, Libya, Malaysia, China, New Zealand, Trinidad and Tobago, Czechia, Bolivia, Australia, Costa Rica, the Bahamas, Kuwait, Papua New Guinea, Bosnia, United Kingdom, and the UAE are all paying lower interest rates than the United States of America, which has one of the hottest and strongest economies in the world. The president sent this note to the Fed chair. It says, Jerome, you are as usual too late. You have cost the USA a fortune and continue to do so. You should lower the rate by a lot. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being lost, and there is no inflation. And the president is right. There is historically low inflation thanks to his policies, and we will continue.
Historically low inflation, so we're pretty safe for a rate drop. And then why should Americans have to pay so much interest on our rates and the rest of the world not? I think we could weather this. I think Trump's got a case. I think Jerome Powell's days are numbered with this investigation. Watch for him to step down. I'm Doug in Exile.